Hello, everybody. It's Mike. So let's see. What did I? Sorry, I forgot the title of what I put on here, which is yes. How can you help the borderline the most? How long before you can reunite with your BPDX? So this is a response to some comments. I appreciate the comments. In fact, I think it's really important. It's one thing for me to just throw out my opinions, but really having um, people's real life questions and comments are important because it's this is a really hard thing to unpack. From my perspective, things are very simple, but I'm out of it. I'm not in the chaos anymore. Being in it, it's a far more complicated, complex, difficult, painful, confusing, deceptive. I mean, the whole thing is it's no fun. There's just nothing fun about being in anywhere in the orbit of one of these relationships. Imagine BPD and somebody who has BPD. Imagine it being like a giant black hole in the universe. So if you've seen what happens with black holes in the universe is that it completely distorts everything. Like if you're if we're looking at some star somewhere through a telescope and there's a black hole between us and them, that black hole will completely distort all of the stars around it. So you might be thinking you're looking directly at a star when the star is way the hell over there, or vice versa. The amount of gravity that it pulls around itself, it just makes it impossible to function comfortably. So while I give really clear, simple advice on things to do, like, if you're in a relationship with a borderline, get out. It's easy for me to say that. I'm not in it anymore. But being in it is a whole different thing. And the angst and intensity of the connection that you feel, the intense bond that you feel, the intense need to take care of them, to get all wrapped up in everything having to do with them. And then when you find out that they have borderline personality disorder and there's this thing called therapy, then it becomes really easy to fall into the idea that if I can just get them into therapy, and if it's just so impossible to disconnect and pull yourself away from it. But that's what you got to do. You can't, assuming that the black hole is beautiful to look at, you can't just keep orbiting around the black hole without eventually getting pulled into it. There's no way. I mean, at some point, the gravity becomes too strong. You can't escape the pull. When you're in that and you need to leave, it's easy for me to say, get out. And it's another thing for you to actually make your way to get out from the pull of the black hole. It's horrific. So with that in mind, I want to share some comments. Again, I do appreciate the comments on the channel. I do appreciate the questions. It's really important. So if you do leave a comment and a question or a question, just be prepared that I may respond. I may even make a video out of it. Everybody can see your comment anyway, so I'm hoping that that's okay with you. But if what you don't want is you don't want me to potentially analyze it or say things you don't want to hear, then don't leave it. The best way to interact with me is to leave an honest question. I mean, the more honest you can get about your question, the more I can help you. Because I tend to react and I want to analyze people if I can tell that they're not aware, or if they've got an unconscious agenda, or if they're manipulative, or, I tend to, get really aggressively, wanting to analyze it. And so that might be challenging for some people. In any case. So this was a really great question that was just left a little while ago. And this person says, hey, Mike, I fell hard for somebody with BPD due to codependency. We were talking for 8 months, relationship for 4. She was great at hiding her emotions due to being 38 with kids. She ghosted again recently, but I really want to share this new insight I found for her and researching my own codependency. Coda, scheduled meeting tomorrow. But regardless, I would really like to share with her what I found and hope she gets help, etc. Question: do you think I should leave her alone since she's in the ghosting phase, or do you think I should just text her sharing the BPD thing? Just so you're aware, if she does come back, I'm going to be hard ass to do. It's going to be hard ass star to do, but going to say, did you get help, etc. If not, then no, this won't work, and support her from afar. I'm still attached due to it's only been a week or less, but working through it, and I would like a sane opinion on how to tell her or just move on. Thank you so much for these videos. My friend's family have no idea what to say to me, and he says that I helped him a lot. So this is in response to my video, BPD, Cognitive Dissonance and the Abyss of Misperception. So, first off, I want to acknowledge the intensity of the feelings surrounding this. This isn't somebody coming to me saying, hey, I'm thinking of buying this stock. Do you think I should buy this stock or buy that stock? This is somebody who is deeply in that, the black hole is pulling him closer and closer to the abyss. And he wants to go. He wants to go in there. I mean, he does not want to walk away. And it's not because he's not smart, and it's not because he hasn't experienced pain. It's because the intense attraction and gravitation that BPDs can create within those of us who vibe with them, we can call it codependent, it becomes really impossible. I'm to be clear and to be honest, I did not unilaterally walk away from my BPDX. I set down a boundary, which then when she split, used that as an excuse to completely, make it impossible. The only way that I could have stayed with her or allowed her to hoover me back is if I had gone against my own boundary. And the boundary that I gave her was after I became aware simultaneously of that I was dangerously codependent and I was in a huge amount of pain. The anxiety that I was feeling was unbearable. The pain and the confusion and the feeling as though I was losing my mind was unbearable. So I knew something was really wrong with me because I'm usually very confident, even if I'm bored in life or even if I feel disillusioned or, those are just sort of normal human things. They can still be really uncomfortable, but there's a whole different reality of pain and insanity and craziness that goes on when you're in one of these cluster B relationships. There's just a whole other realm of hell. And the delusion, it wraps you up in this delusion in the fog, and you can't see out of it. And you're so obsessed with them, and you're so, you can't tell if you want them to get better or if you're in love with them, or you can't tell what you're feeling because there's just this whole mess. So when I read this, it's like I felt the wave of what it was like, and I remembered what it was like. And I thought about my response, and of course my response is to come really hard ass and say, do this and do that, and but I think it's important to acknowledge the intensity of the feelings. So if the things that I tell you to do sound like I'm just being cavalier and superficial about it, I can understand that because the solution is very clear. But being able to pull that off when you're in the midst of being pulled into the black hole and all of the mental confusion that goes along with that, very hard to do. So I am going to do my thing now, and I'm going to analyze what is being said here, and I'm going to try and pull it out of the intense gravitational pull, and so you can see it for what it is. Because the truth is, when we're in it, if we can just see things for what they really are, it becomes absolutely incontrovertible. There's no argument. Oh, I gotta go. That's the only conclusion. When you're at the place where you realize, yeah, I got to go, that means that you're seeing things clearly. If you're bargaining with yourself, if you're bargaining with the borderline, if you're trying to balance these two things and try and get help and stay with the borderline and get them help and stay with the borderline, you're in that realm where you think you're going in the right direction, but then the gravity pulls you back. It's like, surfing. There are times when, you're trying to get through, you're paddling out or something, and you're trying to get through a wave. And as the wave breaks on you, once it breaks in front of you, then you got to deal with it and get pushed down. But sometimes you can punch through the lip as it's breaking, and then you can get through. But sometimes you punch through the lip and you get through and you take a breath, and then all of a sudden you get pulled back, and the next thing you know, you're getting pulled back over the falls, and that's what it's like. With the borderline, you punch through, you think you're about to make it, and then you get pulled back into it. And so it's really tough. So I read the whole comment. So he says, I fell hard for somebody with BPD due to codependency. So that's like saying I got pulled to the ground because of gravity. I mean, it's just, of course, that's the only thing that's going to make you fall hard for someone with BPD, because people who aren't codependent don't. So if you have the feeling, I'm not talking just to this person, but anybody, if you have the feeling that, no, you don't understand, if you were me and you experienced this incredibly beautiful woman do and say these things, you'd fall in love with her too. That's not actually accurate. The truth is that somebody who has good boundaries, who is healthy, who is self-confident, and who isn't codependent, they may be able to go, wow, that's a really beautiful woman, but there will be something that will make them very early on go, yeah, this is too weird. I don't feel comfortable. The other thing is the borderline is not going to be attracted to somebody who has boundaries. They have radar. They can tell. They're not consciously looking for somebody that I can feed off of. They have a need. They have a codependent emptiness within them also. So the borderline is codependent. Both of you are codependent. It's a dual thing here. So you have to have the hole within you. She has the hole within her, and then they match up, and it's like two magnets. If they're polarized, they push away, but if you line them up right, they just come together like that. You can't pull them apart. So that's an obvious. You fell for her. I'm glad that you're aware that you're codependent, but anybody who falls for a borderline is codependent. That's just the way it is. So you were talking for 8 months. Let's just analyze that for a second. So I don't know if that means that you were talking online, like you've been, you weren't really seeing her. It was a long distance thing. But even so, 8 months, I mean, there's entire relationships that last 8 months. And you were going for 8 months just talking. That right there is a huge flag. There's something up. One of the things that, we codependents do because of this giant hole inside of us is we're trying to avoid real connection. You think what you want is to truly be seen and loved, but you mistake the drama of the intensity of the codependent attraction of the two magnets coming together for love and intimacy, and it's not. True intimacy is having somebody see you for who you are and isn't driven and isn't trying to meet some intense need within them. So, talking with somebody for 8 months is something most people just don't do. This isn't, 1850 where everybody lives on a farm and you don't ever get off your farm. And so you just write back and forth, and then there's a meeting, and then you get married, and then you have kids. And no, I mean, there's this whole, modern life where we can interact. So I have a hard time believing that she was the only person available to you. So talking with somebody and not having a real relationship means that you're trying to avoid intimacy, which all codependents are. See, let me get rid of a fallacy. Codependents think that they want intimacy and the borderline doesn't. The borderline is a codependent. What the borderline wants and what you want are the same thing. And both of you guys don't want true intimacy. We can see it more extremely in the borderline because, as you see, when you do connect and the intimacy does reach them, they flip out. So, I mean, it's clear. I mean, that's what they do. They run away from intimacy. Now, you give off the impression of being more wanting to be intimate because you don't split. But the reason why you don't split is because there's no need for you to split, because they're doing all the splitting for both of you. The borderline is expressing your desire to run away from intimacy as well. Where you want to be is in this no man's land, this nothing land where you don't have intimacy and you can't walk away. You're attached and you feel in love. You get just enough. It's like a drug. I mean, drugs are that way. Drugs promise something and never deliver. So the borderline promises something and literally promises and never delivers. You can deliver, but you're not taking your ability to deliver to somebody that will actually take your love. Because the rational thing is to go, wow, this person doesn't want my love. I'm going to go find somebody that does. But instead, what? You don't want my love? Oh my God, I must have you even more. And they become even more desirable. Right? There's a saying, there's nothing more attractive than an out-of-state license plate. Right? Or, women liking bad boys. The whole thing of liking bad boys is liking somebody who's not available. We like bad girls too, somebody who's not available. So, talking for 8 months, relationship for 4. That shows right there. I mean, just take a look at that. There's something wrong with that for 8 months you were willing to have this fantasy and not, have it be real, assuming I'm reading this right. And 4 months, now normally people say 4 months, that's nothing. Well, 4 months with a borderline, because the other thing about black holes is that when you get closer to the event horizon, time stops. So 4 months with a borderline is equivalent to like 10 years with a normal person, because the intensity of everything that's happening, there's just no rest. And the intensity of the emotions, it's I know because I was there. And then he goes on to say she was great at hiding her emotions due to being 38 with kids. That has nothing to do with her hiding her emotions. There are plenty of 38-year-olds with kids who are really open with their emotions and who are really emotionally available. This has nothing to do with anything. This is, again, you're looking for an excuse. As the codependent, you minimize the pain that you're experiencing. You minimize the damage being done to you. You minimize your attachment, your need, your codependence, your addiction. So this is, and what we do is our brain looks for random reasons to explain what's going on. And here you are doing it. You're giving her excuses. None of those things are an excuse for anything. Hiding emotions, being abusive, being unavailable, has nothing to do with being 38 with kids. There are plenty of people. I mean, there's a lot of 38-year-old women watching with kids who say, I don't hide my emotions. And then he goes on to say, she ghosted again recently, but I really want to share this new insight I found for her and researching my own codependency. So I totally understand that. When I was with my borderline and I became aware that she had borderline personality disorder, of course, I found that out because I was having to figure out what the hell was going on with me. So I looked it up and boom, talked to my therapist who knows about borderline, and yep, that was it. Then I was on a mission. I was going to get her into therapy. Not only was I going to get her into therapy, but I felt it was my job to stay with her until she got into therapy. And so there was a good 3 weeks where I was in hell. She was just dragging me along in all kinds of hell. And I was like, I've just got to stay with her long enough to get her. And so, I was doing this thing about finding a therapist. And, they're really good at playing the game. And she was going to find a therapist with me. We were going to find one together. And we were going to go to therapy together. And, she was going to work on this issue and that issue. All the promises that never come true. And I found one. And I made an appointment for her. And so she was going to go do that. And then, of course, at the last minute, she decided that wasn't what she was going to do. And not only was she not going to do that, but I was gaslighting her and I was trying to destroy her by having her go to a licensed therapist whose job is to help her. And so she couldn't have anything to do with me. But just listen again. What I'm not hearing you say, because you could say this, she ghosted again recently, but I really want to become aware of this new insight I found for myself and researching my own codependency and learning how to be self-sufficient. It's not what you said. She ghosted again recently. So let's just take that. You know, when somebody ghosts you, that's the worst kind of go fuck yourself there is. That is, I don't want anything to do with you. Not only do I not want anything to do with you, but I'm not even going to communicate. I'm just going to disappear. I'm going to abandon you. And probably right after, I bet you had the best sex of your life. And you're thinking, oh my God, it's wonderful. Where'd you go? What happened? I thought, didn't you say what? She ghosted you. It's the worst, most unkind, most destructive, most devaluing. I mean, you know, it's horrible. And your response is to find some new cool insight for her. And I understand because I was there, so I'm not judging you, but imagine somebody who isn't a codependent, somebody who isn't, when they ghost you, you're going to go, well, fuck them. I was going to do this and that for them, but if you don't want it, I'll give it to somebody else. Yeah. What? Hello? What? No, you ghosted me. I don't want anything to do with you. Click. That's what a healthy person does. The codependent goes, oh, you ghosted me? Let me go find more cool stuff for you. Let me go prove to you. The assumption that you have that's incorrect here is that if you give her this cool insight, she'll go, oh my God, I totally see it now. And then she'll love you. But she's got a mental illness. And they don't. I'm telling you, that never happens. The only way that this happens, if it does, is when they find it on their own for themselves. I can say with all confidence that I would bet, you know, I'm going to say obviously 99, I'm going to say 100% of the time, your insight is going to have no impact on her. She has to find it for herself because she wants it for her own health, not because of you. And you're doing it for her. The other thing that I want you to feel is how much you want to be with her. How your desire to find this new insight isn't about her. It's about you being with her. And that means it's selfish. So this insight isn't for her. It's you trying to get your obsession. And now you think you found the hook that's going to get her to be with you. You think you're doing it for her, but you're not. You're doing it for your own desire to run away from your pain, your fear of intimacy. This is the delusion that you're doing it for her, that you're there to help her, that there's still some hope that she will come to you and be what you want. You're going to get it. I can feel it. You're going to get her back in that state when you first met her and she was love bombing you and she was so innocent and so pure and so hot and so sexy and so loving. And you want that bad. I found an insight for you. It's not for her. It's for you. And then you say, I really want to show this insight. I found her researching my own codependencies, going to CODA, good for you. But regardless, I would really like to share with her what I found and hope she gets help. So if you know anything about codependence, you know, codependency is not just with cluster Bs, but it's with, you know, somebody who's got any kind of major dysfunction. So the kindest thing that anybody can do for, say, an alcoholic, like the alcoholic who ends up drunk in the street, in the gutter. Now, you may think the kindest thing to do for them is to pick them up, take them into your house, you know, give them a shower, clean them up, give them some food, then sit them down and say, hey, you know, you really got to get yourself together. I'll be here for you. You got a place to stay while you get on your feet. You just, you know, if you promise me you won't drink and I'll be here for you. That sounds like the right thing to do, right? No. That is the worst thing you can do, because the alcoholic, like a borderline, you are the drug for the borderline. Borderline is addicted to drugs, and you are that drug. And just like, people who are addicted to drugs, they get high and then they swear off it and they're never going to do it again. That's when they're ghosting you. They're swearing off of you. I'm never gonna go out with that guy again because it's just bad for me. Even though their thinking is all twisted and they're turning you into the enemy, they're right, because you're not helping them. You're hurting them. Any interaction you have with them is hurting them, because you are somebody who has an agenda. The only person at this stage who can be connected to them without an agenda is a therapist. Because a therapist, their job is to not have an agenda. You can't separate your agenda from the borderline, so you're not qualified to help them. Getting back to the alcoholic, the kindest thing you can do for an alcoholic is let them wake up in their own puke every day, until finally the pain they experience because of their behavior makes them, and again, the percentage of alcoholics that seek out help and stay sober is almost nothing. Same is true with borderlines, same kind of thing. By you saying, I can't have anything to do with you, you're hurtful to me, and I think you're a borderline, bye-bye. By doing that, and if you aren't there to pick them up, then the whole borderline thing will pop into their mind and they'll go, maybe I need to go get help because I'm unhappy. They're not going to do it because of you. They're going to do it because of them. But if you're there, why do they need a therapist? You are the one. They're going to go to what fixes them the most quickly, and that's going to be you. The drama, the splitting, all of that keeps them in their, they're not an addict in that same way, but keeps them in their cycle of self-abuse. So I want to completely destroy any fantasy you have that there's something you can do to help them. You're not qualified. You may know what it is they need to do. You might be right in that what they need is this, that, and the other thing. But you're not the one capable of delivering that message, because they're not going to separate your message from you, and neither are you. You're not going to separate your message from your agenda, which is you want to give them just enough cure so that you can get them to stay with you and they won't hurt you and they won't leave you. But in order for that to happen, they have to stop being what they are, which means you don't see them for being what they are. When you see them for what they really are, if you have that ability, you'll go, oh, the kindest thing I can do is get the hell out. Even if they say, no, please don't leave, you go, listen, I'd love to stay, but I can see that I'm bad for you. You need to be alone. I'm going to leave. You're not doing any of those things. You're still looking for the way to get her to love you, and you haven't figured out that she's not capable. There's no hope. So this individual, whoever else, have you clicked on the join button? I'm willing to bet you haven't, because if you click on the join button, which is right next to the subscribe button, you'll have access to members-only videos where I talk about the hopelessness and how important it is to get to that place of really accepting that it is hopeless. Not hopeless because you're not the one and somebody else is the one. It's hopeless meaning it is impossible for them to ever be able to have a relationship. And the amount of time that it would take for them to get the help, by the time they got enough therapy in them and enough tools, by that time, I guarantee you, you will have forgotten about her. And I guarantee you, she will have moved past you and will not be interested in you. You won't be interested in each other anymore. Because what is connecting the two of you is not love. What is connecting the two of you is both of your dysfunction. You are only connecting by wounds. If you were to go away and fix your wounds, you'd come back together and go, wow, you know what? She's really not that hot. And she'd be like, I don't know what I saw in him. Because that's not why you're connected. You think it's you're connected because of true love, but there's no real love going on here. Then he says, question, do you think I should just leave her alone since she's in the ghosting phase? The fact that she's in the ghosting phase has nothing to do with the fact that I think you should leave her alone. Ghosting phase, idealization phase, I don't care what phase she's in, she's still a borderline. That's like saying, okay, I'm moving towards the black hole. And sometimes these black holes get, planets will come in and there'll be these giant plumes of, stardust and things will come flying out of them. It's like really explosive. Well, you don't want to be on the other end of that. If you're on the opening of a black hole and one of those things happen, that's bad news. So that's like saying, wow, okay, the black hole's spewing all kinds of planet debris. I better get out of the way. Oh, there's the black hole is dormant now. I can now go close to it. No, you need to get the hell away. The gravity of the black hole is going to pull you in and squish you. This is a good example because what happens in a black hole is that, you get squished into the smallest, possible, like the entire universe, the Big Bang was like the size of my thumbnail or something. So that means your whole body, when you get pulled into a black hole, ends up being so microscopic it's undetectable. That's what ends up happening with the borderline. You get pulled into their black hole and you become so devalued you don't exist anymore. So you have to get the hell out regardless of it's the ghosting phase or not. Now the fact that it's the ghosting phase means you have just like me. That's what she did with me. When my borderline ex said, I can't be with you, you want me to get help and you're gaslighting me and, you say I'm a borderline and I'm not, and that's why I'm just going to completely split on you. Wait, what? So I knew that this is what I could expect. It finally dawned on me that, oh my God, this is what this is. And so the last conversation I had with her, as she was telling me why, she can't be with me because she can't trust me, but maybe in a couple months, I said, no, you're right. This is it. I agree with you. We should have nothing to do with each other. I would like for you to lose my phone number, lose my Facebook, lose every contact you have from me. Do not ever contact me again. And then I hung up the phone and I think I pulled over to the side of the road and I blocked her phone number. And as soon as I got home, I blocked her Facebook and I blocked whatever the hell I could block. And then I ended up moving from where I was, so she would have, no way of I'm not impossible to find, but makes it very difficult. But I made it very clear. And so I took advantage of the situation. You can take advantage of the situation. She's ghosted you. Anybody in any position has the right to say, you know what, you ghosted me. I want nothing to do with you. I deserve better than that. This has nothing to do with borderline or non-borderline. Somebody ghosts you. That's a good enough reason to never talk to them again and say, you're an unkind person. I'm going to block you. I don't want anything to do with you. You now have the perfect excuse, so go do it. Go do it before the black hole comes looking for you again, because it will. But again, think about it. She ghosted you. She ghosted you and you want to help her. You're not acknowledging the tremendous abuse that she's heaping on you. You deserve better than that. That in and of itself is the kindest thing you can do for anybody. When somebody is unkind to you in ways that you don't deserve, one of the ways that you are helpful to that person is to say, hey, I have more respect for myself than to be with somebody that does that. And even if they're apologizing, well, I appreciate, I accept your apology, but I don't have to be with somebody that does this, and so I'm not going to be. And then even if somebody isn't a borderline, they have the opportunity to go, wow, I'm going to change my behavior because I don't want to be alone. I want to be loved, so I better deal with this. So no matter how you look at it, the kindest thing you can do for everybody is to ghost her right back. In fact, without even saying anything, just ghost her. You have my permission to do that. I don't recommend doing that. I actually recommend saying, your behavior is painful to me and I'm going to go no contact. I think you should look into borderline personality disorder. and then nothing ever again for life. Let's see, you go on to say, you say, should I text her? No, you should not text her. Number one, she ghosted you. She said she doesn't want anything to do with you. Why are you texting somebody who's saying, I don't want you? You're not respecting their privacy. Somebody's in the bathroom and the door is locked. Stop knocking on the door. Just that in itself. Do you see how you don't have enough boundaries or respect for her because you're so into her? You want her so bad. Should I text her? Having said that, I totally get it, because what's happening energetically, you don't realize this, is that she's inducing you to feel responsible. And she's inducing you to want to chase after her. Her ghosting you is also one of those cries for, really immature cries for help. But the kind thing to do is to not respond, to respond in kind and not connect back. And then he goes, just so aware, if she does come back, it's going to be hard as to do, but I'm going to say, did you get help? Why? Just so I'm aware. What does that mean? You're making me aware that if she does come back, you're going to ask her if she got help? How is that? What is that? That doesn't mean anything. You're telling yourself that you're creating boundaries by, I'm going to ask her if she got help, but it doesn't mean anything. Because you and I both know, if she says, no, I didn't get help, stop asking me. Oh, by the way, take your clothes off, let's have sex. You're going to be, all right, you're going to do whatever she says. You're just kidding yourself. If not, then this won't work, and support her from afar. What does that mean? It means you're going to stay in contact with her, that you still have some ability to help her, that you need to support her. Your support means nothing, because you are trying to help a blind person by giving them sunglasses. She's blind. What support could you possibly give her that she would need? Again, think of it, a blind person, and you're going to give them, reading glasses. Glasses, no glasses, they're still blind. They can't see anything. She's a borderline. She's incapable of seeing you or experiencing true intimacy on any level. And your support is not going to do anything. It's just another excuse setting you up so that you can get back together with her. You still haven't accepted that it is impossible. You still haven't accepted that she has a mental illness that prevents her from not only having a relationship, but prevents her from doing anything other than abusing you. Bear in mind, borderline personality disorder is a mental illness that never goes away. The only thing that ever changes in terms of relationships is after 10 plus years of intense voluntary, not because you asked her, but because she sought it out on her own by herself, 10 plus years of voluntary, intense, regular therapy. Will she then be able to understand that all of these responses in her are her own issue and have nothing to do with you? And as other people have pointed out who I've talked to, who I believe have done this, they do things like they split. They still split. They go from loving their husband to hating their husband. And then they have to tell the husband, I need you to leave the house for the afternoon. Like, if you want to be with them, you have to be willing to, at the drop of a hat, have them kick you out of the house so that they can go and work through their intense splitting. And what you get out of that is that they don't divorce you or leave you, but you still will continue to be devalued. Even after they have 10 plus years of therapy, they're still going to say hurtful things and not remember it. They're still going to do hurtful things and not remember it. They're still going to, when they're conscious, the best you're going to get out of them is, get the hell out of the house. I can't look at you right now. That isn't something that you have to deal with. There are people out there who will love you, who, when you do something that upsets them, they'll sit down and go, hey, when you said thus and such, it really hurt my feelings. And then you'll say, I'm so sorry. And then they'll hug you and have sex with you and cook you dinner. They won't ghost you, call you names, even at their best, kick you out of the house. There are people out there you can have relationships with. Why the fuck do you want to be with her? Ask yourself that question. What the fuck am I doing? The best you're going to get. First off, the best you're going to get, you've already had. Because in any relationship with a borderline, the best you get is the first idealization phase. It never equals that. The idealization phase is best the first time around, and then each idealization phase gets shorter and less intense until finally there's nothing left, and the only thing they can do is completely destroy the relationship and destroy you. So you can, think about the best experience you had with her and then tell yourself, that's the best, I've already gotten it, I'm never going to get it. Just go away and think about that. Just think about that, because it's not going to get any better. But the pain will get so much worse. And you'll damage other people in your life if you don't get help. So I'm really glad you're in CODA, and you should go talk to your sponsor. Get a sponsor if you don't have one. Say, what do you think I should do? She's ghosted me, and she's a borderline. And should I text her? I'm quite certain they will say no. Let's see here. I'm still attached due to it's only been a week or less. Well, you'll still be attached no matter how long. It may, if you're not working on yourself, there are people that have been, just to know the severity of the trap, the gravity of the black hole. There are people that are out of their relationship with their borderline 10, 20 years. They still can't stop thinking about them. The pain, the devaluation, the shame, the guilt, it's still with them 10, 20 years later. Once you get bit by the borderline zombie disease, it doesn't go away just because you're not with them. You think it's only because you've been away for a week, but it can continue to get worse and worse and worse. The longer you go, people wait years and then they get hoovered back in. So that week doesn't really mean anything. And I understand your friends and your family have no idea what to say to you because they don't understand. Because you're talking about, you've just traveled to an alien planet where you've had a connection with an alien being that's from another realm of existence. Doesn't follow any of the normal rules. Of course they're going to be like, what do you mean? The sex organs are in the middle of their back? How do you do that? I don't know what that means. I mean, the emotional weirdness and the totally strange interactions and the pain and the craziness and the confusion that you're feeling, they're not going to understand unless they've been there. Which is why, again, CODA is so good, and doing things like watching my channel and other things is so good. All right, so let's see. Was that the only comment that I wanted to look at? Let me take a look here. There was another comment I really liked. All right, this person says, Mike, I've been watching for a while. I was in a relationship with a borderline and am still involved with her. Now, just listen to the confusion of that. Let me get through the whole comment and then I'll go back and analyze it. I've been watching for a while. I was in a relationship with a borderline and am still involved with her. My question or comment is that I am very codependent, but I had no trauma in my childhood. I had loving parents and we were a great family unit. The trauma that happened was I had a sibling die when I was 15. I later used drugs for years. Can't it be that someone can become codependent from trauma later in life? Now, I'm not a mental health professional, so I can't answer all of the questions. I got to be honest, I don't understand that. You used drugs for years, so does that mean you're a drug addict? It is possible. I've heard of people like alcoholics and drug addicts who grew up in, quote, normal homes, and they had a mental, but if you go back one or two generations, you find there was an alcoholic or a drug addict. So There is some evidence that there is a genetic predisposition to drug addiction that doesn't come directly from your family of origin. But in my experience also, even if your parents weren't, but their parents or their grandparents were, there's still some codependence in there. So codependence doesn't have to be horrifically painful of being yelled at and locked in rooms without food or shamed. Or, it can be very subtle. People can be very loving, but you still very likely learn some habits. You saw, if I were to ask you questions about how your mom and dad got along and, was your mom overprotective? And I'm going to find something in there that, there's some very, because codependence can be very subtle and be very hidden because codependence, their job is to hide, is to cover over the insanity. That's their job. You got the alcoholic dad and the mom covers it over. My house looked perfect from the outside. If you were to drive by at my house as a kid, you would think, wow, look at that big house and the really successful dad and the, well-dressed mom and the, 3 kids and they go to school and they, even if you were to come in and spend, and have dinner with us, you would think that we were a great family. But underneath, there was a lack of connection, a lack of love, just that waspy, no interaction, no sharing of feelings. So the lack of drama doesn't mean that you're not codependent. Because a lot of codependent homes, there's just this complete lack of drama, which means people aren't allowed to have their feelings. So there ends up becoming this intense need to have an emotional connection. So you use drugs later. I mean, the fact that your sibling died when you were 15, that's a tragic thing, but that in and of itself isn't going to cause codependence nor drug addiction. There's something else going on. As sad as that is, by the time you're 15, you're already mentally and psychologically well developed. So whatever created the codependence happened a lot earlier, and it could be much more subtle. And nobody necessarily has to see it. Doesn't mean that families have to yell and scream at each other. They could be very civil with each other and follow and be loving and all that, but there's still some emotional irregularity and lack of connection. Again, I don't know. Perhaps I said, I suggested this person talk to a psychologist and find out. Maybe there is. I don't know. But to get involved with a borderline to the extent that you are, because let's go back and look at how codependent you are. You say, I was in a relationship with a borderline, and then you say, and am still involved. What the hell does that mean? Does that mean that you're no longer in a romantic relationship, but you've been put in the friend zone? She discarded you, but still keeps you around, and you say we're just friends, but when she needs to come over and spend the night and have sex with you, or have you drive her to the hospital, or something like that, you'll just drop everything and go do whatever the hell she wants. You say you're still not involved, we're just friends, but you're patiently waiting for her to come back and say, I want to be with you. What does this mean? You were in a relationship and you're still involved. Which one is it? See, this no man's land, because they will take you into a no man's land. They will take you there. I remember the first time my borderline split on me, she tried to take me into one of these no man's land. And I remember saying, I don't understand what you're asking. You mean you don't want to date me, but you want me to be available to you when you're horny? Yeah. So you want to be dating other people and you want to be searching for a boyfriend that you can commit to. And while you're doing that, you want to be able to hook up with me whenever it's convenient. Yeah. I mean, she just didn't get it. And I said, why would I do that? None of that sounds like fun at all. And then, of course, she said, okay, you're right. And then she wanted to get back together, which, of course, fell apart. So you're extremely codependent because you were in a relationship and now you're still involved. And now you want to know how you became codependent. And, again, I don't know. I might be wrong. A psychologist might be able to explain some scenario I'm not aware of, but just the way you explained it, the vagueness of it. I'm willing to bet that your relationship at home was very vague. Like, yeah, my parents love me, but my dad's never home. Or, my mom loves me, but she never hugs me. And there's something, there's some vagueness, which is, tantamount to emotional neglect, which is, I think, the most abusive thing. There's this emptiness, there's this distance. And the way you describe your current relationship with the borderlines, very confused. I was in a relationship, meaning you're not anymore, but you're still involved. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? And the fact that you can write that and not see how weird that sounds. So, being a codependent can be, it's easier to be in some cases to be a borderline because it's really clear, because how screwed up that is. It's very clear for everybody to see. But to be in that state of vagueness where there's this emotional fog and nothing's really clear, nothing's really bad, but there's no real connection. That's a really horrible, horrific place emotionally to be. So I can understand that. And I remember living like that in my family, a lot of that. Like I said, we look great on the outside. You can come over to our house and have a dinner party and not know that, everybody is silently, desperately in pain and lonely. What is that Pink Floyd song? Talking about how, the English way, something about, suffering in silence or something like that is the English way. That's that waspy, lack of connection, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. We're all together, we're a family unit, but we're really not connecting. So I have to say, bottom line, my thought process is, yeah, maybe you guys didn't beat each other up or get locked in closets or anything like that. Maybe there wasn't alcoholism or drug addiction or, cluster B, but there was some lack of emotional connection somewhere. You can't put your finger on it, but there was, this emptiness. Everybody's suffering alone in silence. I'm willing to bet that was probably the case. And because you're codependent, you've been trained to minimize that. Just minimizing all feelings, minimizing love. I can remember my dad, I remember trying to tell my dad I loved him once when I was, how old was I? 18. And I just said, hey, Dad, I love you. And he went, he couldn't say it. He tried. His mouth, he couldn't do it. I remember being 18 and, this was a long time ago. So, things were a little different back then. But, I couldn't hug another guy. The idea of hugging another guy, hey, good to see you, and hugging him, I couldn't do that. That was just too weird and too, more like I think about it now, it's like, no, if I see a friend that I haven't seen, I'm going to give him a big old hug. But, back then, just the thought of that was it was frightening. So I'm willing to bet there's something like that going on and minimizing it by saying there's no problems. Yeah, but there's so much emptiness, I bet. I could be wrong, but that's my thought about it. All right, I'll take a look and see if there's any questions. I do like to take questions. The best way to interact with me is to ask an honest question. But let's see here. I don't see anything here. So this guy knows what I'm talking about. All right. All right, so Ryan says, we met at work. To make matters worse, just got out of a 5-year relationship. What does that mean? You just got out of one? I noticed when she came back, I split. I don't know what that means. I'm not getting enough information. Are you saying that you acted like a borderline? Who did you split on? Did you split on your 5-year relationship, or you split on? Are you saying you think you might be borderline, or did you just catch borderline from her? It's not clear. I'm not clear on what you're trying to say. Renee says, my ex with BPD wanted more and more intimacy and started insinuating that I was an avoidant. which I know I am not. So the more intimacy I gave ended up ultimately setting off his abandonment fear. Yeah. Well, that's, the craziness of the borderline is that they desperately want connection and they're afraid of being abandoned, and they think they want love more than anything else, and they project. So, pretty much anything that comes out of the mouth of a borderline is all projection. You can pretty much just bank. If they're saying something about you, it's projection. So, you might be right. The thing is that two borderlines can get together. Borderlines and narcissists, cluster Bs can get together. You might be one and not know it. That's a possibility. So your BPDX might be right saying that you're an avoidant, but all codependents are avoidant. And that's why they choose borderlines and narcissists, because there's no intimacy there, so it makes it safe. So you can chase after somebody with the feeling of wanting to connect, but the moment, I guarantee you, the moment if your borderline magically got healthy and normal and turned around and said, oh my God, I do love you, you would go, you would take off. You wouldn't be able to handle it. Because if you could handle it, you'd be with somebody who loved you. That's the craziness of it. Codependents talk about how if only they would let me love them. Literally just look around anywhere. There is no shortage of people who will love you. No shortage of them. I understand. They get, I went on a coffee date yesterday. I couldn't find anything wrong with her. Not attracted to her. So it could just be that we weren't attracted, but I walked away going, wow, I was bored. She was probably, she probably would have been a great person to be with. Because I felt so bored and there was nothing wrong with her. So I get it. But we are avoidant. Just by being codependent, we're avoidant. It's built into us. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. So I'll do a little bit of business and then I'll get off unless some more questions come up. This join button here, here's how it works. You click the join button. I really recommend it. Look, if you get bit by the borderline, you're going to get the borderline virus in you. And, as I say every time, if you flip over your mind is a canoe on the water of your emotions. So, by the way, anytime you have a dream about drowning, it means you're overwhelmed by your feelings. And so the ocean and a canoe is a really good metaphor for this. Your mind is like a canoe on the water of emotions. But if you tip it over, now it's not going to tip itself back over again. You can't just sit there and wait. It's not going to tip itself back over. It's going to start to sink. So your mind is like that. And when you get involved with a borderline, they flip your emotions. They flip you, your brain, your thought process gets flipped. And just because you're not with the borderline doesn't mean that your canoe is going to right itself, because it doesn't. It stays upside down. So you have to right it. So I talk on here about how I did that. And I share with you a very clear presentation of how to look at your connection to the world. What is your assumption about your relationship to the universe? If you don't start with that assumption, it makes it a lot harder. So I help to flip your canoe back right side up on top of your emotions. And then I talk about some very specific ways to look at things. I take you through a process of how to understand, how to look at things, how to figure things out. And then I give you some very specific meditative practices that will actually balance the hemispheres of the brain and get you out of the state of trauma. Now, this guy, Ryan, definitely you, but probably anybody listening, you are in a state of survival. You're in a trauma state of survival, and you're operating from the reptilian part of your brain. You're not using most of your brain. You're in a state of trauma because that's what happens when you're in a war zone. Sitting around thinking about the nature of the universe is going to get you killed. You have to focus on one thing, which is you got to kill the enemy or get the hell out of the way. And that's all you at. This whole need of trying to help her and fix her and tell her what she needs and all that, that is all you in crisis survival mode. And people stay in that for their entire lives. They never get out of it sometimes. So this meditation helps you to go and see things and use your whole brain and be able to see things more clearly and more objectively. And then, of course, I talk about the 3 things which are most important, which you don't have to join to do, which is number 1, first thing I recommend is therapy. Okay, number 2, coda.org. I have no sympathy for somebody who doesn't do that because it's free and it's online. If you're not willing to do that, I don't want to hear you complain. I'll have no sympathy for you. And then 3, daily meditation. If you do those 3 things on a daily basis to the best of your ability, I can guarantee you that you can recover. I have completely healed from my codependent borderline ex relationship. Now, I'm very specific. I still have issues and I still have to do these things on a daily basis, to continue to learn and to grow. But in terms of her, I have no pain left in me whatsoever. I have no rumination, obsession, connection, and it's because I did that stuff, and very quickly it helped me get back to normal. It might take you longer, but it doesn't matter how long. It just matters what you do. So if you want to figure that out, click the join button and join at the super empath level. That's the level where you get access to the members only videos. Okay. So that's it. I don't see any more questions here. Ryan is thanking me. You're welcome, sir. Keep it up. Keep watching. It's just one day at a time. You got to treat it like an addiction. So the thing to do is you're not going to text her today. You're not going to call her today. You're not just for today. Tomorrow, you want to text her tomorrow, you can think about that tomorrow. Today, you're not going to. You're going to stay no contact. You're going to block all forms of communication so that she can't get a hold of you. And you're going to go to your CODA meeting and you're going to get somebody's sponsor or email, phone number, and you're going to talk to somebody on a daily basis. Every time you want to text her, you're going to text your sponsor instead. Say, I want to text my borderline X. Just doing that changes, lays down new pathways in the brain. And if you keep doing that over time, you can be free. So that's it. Thanks everybody for being there. Stay safe. And I wish everybody health and happiness and freedom and all that good stuff. So that's it. Let's take a look before we go. What is a chronic empath? Would you like to know? This is a list of what it means to be a codependent. I call it chronic empathy. By the way, people say I'm not a codependent, I'm an empath. Well, the first requirement for being a codependent is to be an empath. So that kind of ruins that. You're empathic, you're a caregiver, you're an optimism addict. You're always looking for it's going to be better tomorrow. You're filled with anxiety, depression, you have no boundaries. Somebody tells you to go fuck off and they block you. You still ask, should I text them or not? You're not assertive. You say, maybe I'll tell them this, and then they just ask for whatever they want and you give it to them anyway. Total fear of abandonment. The idea that this person who treats you like garbage, there's still this feeling that, but she's the most amazing thing and what will I do without her? Well, you won't be getting shit on a daily basis. That's what it'll be. Chronic responsibility. It's your job to fix them. It's your job to take care of them. It's your job to have them heap abuse on you and to fix them. They can't help it, but it's your job to have your shit together and theirs too. Victimhood. So you share the victimhood of your empath. You have trust issues. For some reason, you trust somebody you know can't be good to you, but you can't trust anybody else. Anger. The anger does come at some point. You find yourself blowing up at other people, taking all the anger that you have towards your cluster B and yelling at somebody while you're driving down the road because they're not doing what you want. This comes to control. You want to control everything. And you try and control the borderline through your constant loving them. That's a way of trying to control them. Passive aggressive. Can't tell you how passive aggressive codependents are, especially when they're confronted. And feeling trapped all the time. Constant anxiety of feeling like, when is the other shoe going to drop? And if I could only get out of this, and if I could only do this. If you have any of these, you are a codependent. All right, that's it for me, guys. Have a great day. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Let's see, where am I going? I'm looking for something. I'm not finding it. I'm looking for an end screen.